Darren Kennedy stumbled through his front door well after midnight, his body heavy with exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical labor. It was the crushing weight of uncertainty that drained him. He moved like a stray cat in unfamiliar territory, jumpy, hyper-alert, every nerve stretched tight as a wire. Danger could strike from any shadow, at any moment, and yet he felt no desire to flee. Quite the opposite. He craved it. He hungered for whatever challenge lay ahead more than he had ever wanted anything in his life. The true torment came from the endless waiting, the gnawing suspense of not knowing. All he desired was clarity, a clear command, a mission, and the chance to prove how swiftly and completely he could carry it out. The Grand Knights of the Royal Order of U operated as one of the most enigmatic and influential brotherhoods in existence. To the few outsiders who had caught whispers of their activities, they were known simply as the Magistratus. This clandestine organization wove invisible threads of power through the uppermost echelons of government, finance, media, and industry across the Western world. According to their own grand lore, the order had quietly shaped the rise and fall of empires since the medieval era, guiding the destiny of modern civilizations from behind velvet curtains of secrecy. At least, that was the tale laid out in the lavish recruitment brochure Darren had received, an impressive, full-color production printed on thick, glossy stock, filled with dramatic imagery and lofty promises. The invitation had come from Richie Land, an old university acquaintance Darren had not spoken to in ages. Every member bore the duty of recruiting exactly one new initiate, and Richie's previous efforts had apparently fallen flat. Darren suspected he was something of a backup choice, yet this realization did not trouble him in the slightest. If anything, it felt like destiny finally knocking. This was the pivotal moment he had always sensed was waiting for him. Darren was a natural connector, a master networker, a charming predator in the social jungle. His career in insurance thrived not on cold calling or aggressive pitches, but on relationships, warm introductions, and carefully cultivated trust. Referrals were his lifeblood. The Magistratus represented the ultimate network, an unparalleled gateway to the kind of high-level contacts that could transform his modest existence into one of effortless wealth and influence. Nights had become sleepless whirlwinds of excitement as he imagined the doors this affiliation would open. He had finally arrived. He was stepping into the inner circle of the true power players. The formal induction ritual itself proved surprisingly anticlimactic. It unfolded in a dimly lit chamber, heavy with tradition, flickering candles casting long shadows, participants draped in ceremonial robes, and murmured incantations in ancient tongues that echoed off stone walls. Darren stood at the center, reciting a short series of oaths with steady confidence. It was theatrical, almost theatrical in its pomp, but he played his part flawlessly. What he had not anticipated was that this ornate ceremony marked merely the beginning of his entry into the order. A far more serious test awaited, the trial of brotherhood. This trial served as the ultimate proof of loyalty. Whenever a fellow member issued a request for assistance, refusal was unthinkable. Obedience was absolute. The brotherhood demanded precedence over family, nation, career, and personal ambition. Only devotion to the divine ranked higher. For Darren, this final hurdle meant he would soon receive sealed instructions from the order. They could arrive without warning, perhaps at the most inconvenient time, which explained his current state of raw nerves. He yearned to complete the task and move forward into his bright new chapter of success and status. The delay gnawed at him relentlessly. 3 full days had now passed since the ceremony. No word had come. He understood the psychological game. They wanted him off balance, kept in total darkness, but the strategy was working far too well. Darren paced the confines of his modest living room like a caged animal, still dressed in the same rumpled business suit from earlier that day. Dark sweat stains spread across the fabric under his arms and down his back. His lips moved constantly in muttered fragments of thought, rehearsing imagined scenarios and responses. Then, without mercy, the sharp ring of his telephone shattered the heavy silence. The sound jolted through him like electricity. Heart hammering, Darren approached the device cautiously, staring at it for a long second before snatching up the receiver. "Hello," he barked, forcing boldness into his voice. Silence greeted him. Only faint, crackling static hummed across the line. "Hello," he repeated, louder this time. He strained to listen. Could that be the sound of slow, deliberate breathing on the other end? A low, gravelly voice finally emerged, heavy with disapproval. "We are very disappointed in your progress." Darren blinked, confusion flooding his mind.
What?
"What do you mean? Is this the order? Hello?" The line went dead with a sharp click. "Hello?" Darren shouted uselessly into the void. "Progress? What progress? You haven't even told me what to do." He slammed the receiver down, mind racing. Could it have been a mistake? A wrong number? No, that was foolish thinking. It had to be them. But nothing made sense. How could they expect progress when no instructions had been delivered? The anxiety that had simmered for days now boiled over into frantic bewilderment. His first instinct was to reach out to Richie for guidance. Surely his old friend could offer some insight or reassurance. Darren's fingers hovered over the phone buttons, dialing the first few digits before he froze. Contact with any member during the trial of brotherhood was strictly forbidden. Breaking that rule could ruin everything he had worked toward. He pulled his hand back as if the device had burned him. Now the waiting felt heavier than ever, laced with fresh layers of doubt and paranoia. Darren resumed his pacing, the weight of unseen eyes and silent expectations pressing down on him from all sides. Whatever trial lay ahead, it had already begun, and he was stumbling through it blind. Darren Kennedy stood frozen in the middle of his living room, the echo of the mysterious caller's words still ringing in his ears. He recalled the strict warning from the induction materials with crystal clarity. Under no circumstances were initiates to reach out to existing members during the trial of brotherhood. Any violation would lead to immediate and permanent dissolution from the order. That rule made perfect sense in the shadowy world he was trying to enter. At least, he thought it did. Doubt still nibbled at the edges of his mind, but he pushed it aside. What exactly did the magistratus expect from him? He had been told to wait patiently for further instructions, hadn't he? The glossy brochure had implied as much, and so had the robed figures during the ceremony. Or maybe he was supposed to return to the ceremonial hall on his own. His thoughts spun in chaotic circles. A sharp knock suddenly reverberated through the apartment door. Darren's entire body locked up. This had to be them. Who else would appear at this hour? Another knock followed, more insistent. Should he open it? He hesitated, heart pounding against his ribs. Yes, he should. They were finally making contact. No, perhaps he shouldn't. What if it was a test of patience? His mind screamed in conflicting directions. He had to do something. After a frantic internal battle, he unlatched the multiple locks with trembling fingers and cracked the door open, just enough to peer out. The hallway stood empty. Not a soul in sight. He flung the door wider and scanned both directions, eyes darting nervously. The only things out of place were a few paint cans and drop cloths left by the ongoing renovation crew. As he stepped forward to investigate, his foot struck something solid. A small, unmarked brown cardboard box rested on the floor. No labels, no return address, nothing. It had to be from the order. Finally, a tangible sign. He snatched it up and hurried back inside, pulse racing. What could be inside? Should he even open it without explicit permission? What if this was another test, and opening it prematurely would get him expelled? The second-guessing was driving him to the brink of madness. In a burst of desperate courage, he grabbed a kitchen knife and sliced through the tape. Peeling back layers of protective tissue paper, he revealed the contents. One elegant pair of glossy red high-heeled shoes. Darren stared at them in utter bewilderment. Women's footwear? He rummaged through the box again, hoping for a note, a card, any scrap of explanation. Nothing. Frustration boiled over. He actually began tugging at his own hair in anguish, muttering wildly to himself. Then the phone call replayed in his head. "We are very disappointed in your progress." That single phrase became his only clue. Suddenly, a memory from his college days surfaced. He remembered wild stories about fraternity initiations where pledges had to cross-dress as part of humiliating rituals. Could this be something similar? A test of humility and obedience? The evidence sat right there in his hands, bright red heels staring back at him. It had to be. The order wanted him to embrace a feminine disguise as his trial of brotherhood. That explained the disappointment in his lack of initiative. He had finally cracked the code. Without wasting another moment, Darren called his office and claimed he was seriously ill, requesting time off. That night, he stayed up late, frantically browsing websites and placing overnight orders for dresses, a wig, makeup, and anything else he thought he might need. The next morning found him camped out near his front door like a sentry, anxiously waiting for the deliveries. When he heard a knock, he peeked out eagerly, only to realize it was at his neighbor's apartment. "Hey," he whispered urgently to the delivery man. The burly guy turned, looking confused. "You talking to me?" Darren tried to keep his voice low. "Yeah, are those packages for 23B? Marianne's boutique." The delivery driver checked the labels and raised an eyebrow. "Women's clothes, huh? You sure these are yours? Address says 23B, but the numbers are missing because of the painting." He gave Darren a knowing smirk. "You D.G. Kennedy?" Darren wanted to punch the man, but forced a strained smile instead. "Yes," he hissed, trying to stay quiet. He scribbled a hasty signature on the electronic pad, snatched the packages, and slammed the door shut, face burning with embarrassment. Inside, he tore open the boxes and laid everything out. He clumsily applied bright red lipstick, crammed his feet into the heels, stuffed socks into his shirt for makeshift curves, pulled on the wig, and struggled into a loud floral dress. It was now or never. He couldn't back down. His plan was simple. Walk around the building once or twice to be seen, then retreat to safety. He took the freight elevator down and stepped out into the city streets, wobbling unsteadily like a newborn giraffe. He kept his eyes fixed straight ahead, avoiding any eye contact. In a metropolis this size, people had witnessed far stranger sights, so no one bothered him. After one nerve-wracking lap around the block, he slipped back into the building through the rear entrance, relieved he hadn't bumped into anyone familiar. Collapsing onto his couch, Darren gasped for air like a marathon runner. Before he could even catch his breath, the phone rang again. "We are very disappointed in your progress," the gravelly voice intoned. "What?" Darren cried, but the line had already gone dead. He slammed the receiver down in fury and rushed to the mirror. The reflection staring back was pathetic, pantyhose sagging around his ankles, lipstick smeared across his face, fake breasts lopsided. He looked ridiculous, like an amateur in a bad costume. Clearly, he needed expert help. After some research, he made an appointment at a transformation studio called Makeovers by Violet in the heart of the city's vibrant gay district. He spent a small fortune on the full treatment, professional makeup, tweezed eyebrows, pierced ears, and a far more convincing wig. When he looked in the mirror afterward, the results pleased him. He could still recognize himself, but the rough edges were smoothed, the masculine sharpness softened. He resembled a flashy Vegas showgirl who might have once worked construction, bold, glamorous in a drag queen way, but convincing enough for his purposes. Dressed in a sparkling red gown, long chandelier earrings, flashy costume jewelry, and nails painted bright red and extended to dramatic lengths, Darren strutted up and down the sidewalk in front of his building. Passers-by probably thought a touring Broadway production had arrived in town. After 20 minutes of parading, he felt certain he had proven his commitment. Then his cell phone rang from inside his glittering purse. The sudden vibration made his wig slip halfway off his head. "Yellow," he answered, voice still rough. "We are very disappointed in your progress," the voice croaked. Darren nearly exploded with rage. "Damn it," he bellowed, drawing stares from everyone nearby. He fought the urge to smash the phone on the concrete. He realized the next flaw instantly, his voice. It still sounded completely masculine. Over the following days, he threw himself into intensive practice. He found online courses on feminine voice training and spent hours repeating phrases in a soft, lilting tone. He walked around his apartment saying things like, "Hello, Kennedy residence, how may I help you?" until the words flowed naturally. Finally, when the phone rang again, he answered with perfect poise. "Hello, Kennedy residence. Perfect, he thought triumphantly. Surely this would satisfy them. We are very disappointed in your progress, came the same cold response before the line clicked dead. Darren was beside himself with fury and confusion. But then clarity struck. There was still one major issue holding him back. For a brief moment, he felt everything he desired: wealth, power, connections, slipping through his fingers. Now that he understood, victory seemed within reach again. He was simply too large. At 5 feet 9 inches and nearly 155 pounds, his build worked fine for a man, but it was far too heavy for the feminine image he was trying to project. Every outfit he had ordered over the past couple of weeks had been plus-sized to accommodate his frame and hide his broader shoulders and thicker waist. But if he was truly going to succeed, Darren Kennedy realized that if he truly wanted to slip into a convincing, elegant dress and pass as an authentic woman, drastic measures were essential. He needed to shed weight quickly. At first, he threw himself into basic exercise routines and calorie counting, but the results trickled in too slowly for his liking. Frustrated, he moved on to powerful weight loss supplements and extreme celebrity-style diets that promised rapid transformation. When even those fell short of his urgent timeline, he took the plunge and scheduled a targeted liposuction procedure, just enough to sculpt his waist and create smoother, more feminine contours. He had been meaning to trim down anyway, so he justified the decision as long overdue self-improvement. The aggressive regimen paid off dramatically. Before long, he had dropped to a slender 115 pounds. Following the surgery, he was required to wear a tight compressive garment for several weeks to aid healing and shape the results. He deliberately chose the female version, which hugged his body exactly as he hoped. His waist had shrunk to an impressive 22 inches, and the doctor assured him it would become even more refined once the swelling subsided. To his satisfaction, the garment seemed to redistribute his remaining fat, enhancing his hips and rear into fuller, rounder, unmistakably feminine curves. The entire process had been costly, but Darren viewed every dollar as an investment in his future with the order. Stepping out in front of his building, he felt a surge of confidence in his new peplum skirt set in a rich, brandy hue. The tailored outfit perfectly highlighted his newly cinched waist and shapely figure. He spent the entire afternoon running errands around the neighborhood, deliberately lingering in visible spots so that any watchful eyes from the magistratus would have no choice but to notice his dedication. He had not wasted his recovery period either. In quiet moments, Darren had opened a fresh bank account and credit card under the name Kimberly Kennedy. He even obtained a convincing fake ID in that name, determined to cover every possible expectation. He refused to be caught unprepared. No risks would be taken. Later that day, he clacked down the sidewalk in his heels and flagged down a taxi. When the first few ignored him, he boldly stepped into traffic, waving his arms with dramatic flair until one finally screeched to a halt. Climbing in proved unexpectedly difficult. The long, tight skirt restricted his movement. He ended up awkwardly hoisting himself inside, gripping the roof for balance and twisting his legs together before tumbling onto the seat. His curly wig slipped sideways, and he hastily pushed it back into place, slamming the door shut with a flustered sigh. Almost immediately, his cell phone rang. "We are very disappointed in your progress," the familiar gravelly voice declared. Darren's dreams of power and success flashed before his eyes like fading illusions. He could picture the shadowy figures of the order trailing him constantly, watching from alleyways, observing from rooftops, murmuring their disapproval. The pressure was suffocating. He had done so much, yet it still wasn't enough. Then a realization hit him. The last call had come right after his clumsy attempt to enter the taxi. That had to be the missing piece. He might look the part and sound the part, but he was still moving and behaving like his old masculine self. The order wanted genuine femininity in every gesture and mannerism. Determined to close this gap, Darren sought out Dr. Paige Carlisle, a psychologist renowned for guiding transgender transitions and an expert in hypnotherapy. After some persuasive negotiation and a substantial payment, she agreed to combine both approaches for intensive sessions. 2 weeks of twice-daily hypnotherapy produced astonishing changes. Darren could feel his walk becoming lighter and more graceful, his gestures softer and more expressive. His posture improved, his smile turned warm and inviting, and even his resting facial expression radiated femininity. He held his head high, glided rather than strode, and carried himself with natural poise. "Thank you so much, Paige," Darren gushed at their final session, voice filled with gratitude.